I'm going to stand up because I need to. I don't totally know what I'm talking about, actually, because I've written something about 7 different times, and every time I'd be like, oh no, it's not that. Then I'd write something else and be like, oh no, it's not that. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to speak from my heart, because that's really what this is about. And I'm already getting tears, it's already happening. But what I have to say I don't want to make assumptions, but some of it might be triggering. It might bring up a lot of emotions in the room. And so I just want to invite this all right now, just to kind of ground ourselves. Just, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes and feel your feet on the ground. And maybe feel your knees, feel your entire body. And feel your eyes, and kind of let your eyes relax. It's an odd thing, but kind of just let them lay down. Often we have so much tension in our eyes. Just sort of let them have a little break from focusing so hard. And feel your shoulders, and feel if there's any tightness in them. And just sort of allow them to lay back in whatever way they want to. Maybe take a deep breath. Just let them be there. And scan your body and see if there's any tightness anywhere. And if there is, just sort of notice it. Say, okay, I see that. And feel into your heart, the space in your chest. As women, we carry so much in this space. This is where our breasts are. This is also where we really protect ourselves. It's also where we really give of ourselves. And often we're carrying so much pain in that area, or so much that wants to be spoken that we don't even realize it. So just breathe some spirit air in. And feel as if you're breathing into your heart. And know that you can always come back to this space inside of you. So I invite you to open your eyes and just know that at any point you can always return back to your heart. And at any point you feel tension or you feel like, oh, this is uncomfortable, you can take a really deep breath and come back to your heart. A deep breath has saved many lives. So, I am who I am, and that's okay. I am who I am, and that is all right. I am who I am, and that is okay. I am who I am, and that is all right. It takes a lot to say those words in front of this community of people. Even though I'm a cradle Mennonite, as some say. My mom's Mennonite. My entire that side of the family is very, very Mennonite from Iowa. I never really totally felt like I fit completely in. And it's only until recently that I look back, and my father's British, and I see that a lot of why I didn't feel like I fit in was because I had this entire other world perspective, like an Anglican man from Britain, and my parents were very stressed, like traveling and seeing our family there and having tight connections. And so I kind of saw the world through eyes that my small Mennonite community in Iowa didn't necessarily have the same eyes that I had. But I didn't understand that that's why I felt like I didn't fit in. I never really totally got it. I just knew that there was always this outsider aspect, even though I was very clearly on the inside. There were many factors also that made me outsider. When I was 3, I was sexually abused. I began the blog Our Stories Untold, so I've told the story there, and some of you have probably heard me talk about this before. But that also gave me a knowledge of myself that didn't exactly fit into the dominant narrative. From that experience, I had a lot of shame and a lot of fear and a lot of repression, and I didn't really know how to speak or talk of it. Then when I was 15 years old, I was in what I now see was a sexually abusive relationship. At the time, I didn't understand. I was with a 19-year-old, my first boyfriend, my first kiss to my first sexual partner in a matter of 3 weeks. Why I couldn't really see that as abusive is, I didn't know. No one taught me. So that experience in itself also put me on the outside. Searching for answers, I actually went to a Baptist youth group for a very brief period of time. And I told them what was going on, and instead of, receiving me in love and helping me through it, I instead heard that it was my fault, and that it was up to me to keep it from happening again, and to keep the man from having sex with me, essentially. Like, it was up to me to stop that. So in some really weird backwards way, it actually gave me the empowerment to break up with him, because I saw I can't stop this. This is unstoppable. I don't know if I could make this stop. I would have already. But somehow I was able to distance myself and say, okay, no. It was a little glimpse of owning my own power, even though it came from a rhetoric and a language that really heaped on the shame and made me feel like I had done something horribly wrong. Then I actually transferred schools to a small Mennonite school, which was a part of my healing process, I see now as well. But in that, I've always been the person who wears her heart on her sleeve. Always been very honest. And so I was honest about my experience and my confusement with this sexual experience and the fact that I wasn't a virgin, which was not met with love. It was instead met very much with shame, with you're wrong, with that is bad, that is gross, that is dirty, that is disgusting, poor you. You are damaged goods. I had people say, what man is ever going to marry you? First of all, assumption that I wanted to be with a man. And that became embedded. That became who I was. And from that, I had this massive shield of protection. I really didn't date much. I had these weird love ships, if you will, where people would be attracted to me, but I was in total denial about it, and would hang out with them until they were I'm into you, and I'd be oh, go away. It was a life of shame. Within that narrative as well, when I was 15 years old, I realized that I was also attracted to women. I told one person in my high school this, and thankfully he received me with a lot of love. But this was also another narrative that I kept extremely silenced. It wasn't until I was 25 that I actually came out with that knowledge and with that understanding of myself. It was also this point that, very shortly after that point, that I went to the Mennonite convention in 2014. At this convention, I went to, first of all, it was the first time that I was in a public space where I was publicly out. I had been in public spaces talking about sexual abuse with Our Stories Untold, and I'd been in public spaces talking about other things pertaining to my otherness. But I hadn't been in a public space where I was actually comfortably or uncomfortably saying oh, I'm not straight. And so it was the first time I actually experienced what it felt like to have heat directed right at me. With the sexual abuse thing, people are oh, poor you, you're a victim, I'm not, I'm a thriver. But that's sort of the mentality. It's now, not in high school, but now people embrace that part of you. But with your sexuality that is extremely other than the dominant normal narrative, it's not like for you. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not part of us. You are other. You are creating fractions in this church by simply wanting to belong. And that is excruciatingly painful. Within that, I also went to the service for sexual healing. I really still can't talk about this event. All I know is hearing church leaders be up there and making these grand apologies for the abuse that they have committed, while sitting next to my close queer friends in the church who have done so much work, and hearing these words come out of these mouths without making any sort of acknowledgement that they're continuing to perpetuate sexualized violence upon this very community. And to have only one half of myself recognized and say, like, oh, we're profusely sorry about that part of you, while the other side of me was just blatantly ignored, disregarded, was honestly too much to take. Like, I was just crushed. I didn't know how much I had internalized that shame of not being one of the group until that moment. And the rage that bubbled up in me was something I'd never seen before. It honestly terrified me. I didn't know, like, how I could feel this kind of pain. Poor Linda heard a whole mouthful. She happened to sit on the bench after the service, and I've never said so many cuss words in church in my whole life. It was just like word after word after word. It just, I don't know. And for a week plus afterwards, I was just destroyed. Like, I was this, like, a seething fury. Like, I lived in a community, and my community members were like, oh, wow. You know, they held me in the most beautiful way, but, like, no one could say anything. Like, nothing. It was just pure, raw anger directed at everything and anything. A friend actually came out to New Mexico, where I currently lived at the time. He came out from California, and because he's like one of those spiritual connections, and he was able to walk me through it. Thank the goddess. So within all of this, what I found is actually the power of embodiment. So it's really hard for me to come up here and say all of this. And I tried backing out multiple times. I really didn't want to come. My anxiety level, like the cortisol in my body, was out of control the past 2 weeks. It just felt so wrong in so many ways. I actually took a major step back from the church. After that event, I realized that I sort of had the epiphany that I needed to leave Our Stories Untold, which was such a core part of my identity. And I recognized that Our Stories Untold was what actually gave me power. It was like the thing I was holding on to in this church space that helped me feel like I did belong, that I somehow did have a voice, that I somehow was an okay person. Like, having that blog was a means of survival for me for 4 years. And it was a means of survival for so many people. All the people who have written in for Barbara, for Hillary, who are continuing the work. It was a blog of survival. Me starting was a survival. It was me embodying my pain. But it also came to a place where I saw that I couldn't care anymore about what the church thought of me. And maybe that sounds like really crass or selfish or something, but I just couldn't care anymore. I couldn't care what people thought, what people didn't think, what people perceived. I couldn't care about the pastors who told people behind my back that I didn't believe in Jesus. I couldn't care about the people who said I wasn't Christian. I couldn't care about the people who said I was dirty. I couldn't care about the people who said I was damaged goods. I couldn't care about the people who said I was breaking up the church. that I was not worthy of love, that I was not worthy of Jesus' love. Like, I couldn't care. So stopping that work with Our Stories Untold and knowing that it would be carried on in the most beautiful way by Barbara and Hillary gave me empowerment, and it gave me an embodied sense of who I am. Because I could rebuild myself back up from that trauma that I experienced at convention, and from the trauma and shame that I've sort of experienced throughout my church life that's really wrapped up in being a woman, and being an embodied woman, being a woman who has feelings, who has expressions, who has sexuality. Like being this in this form. So really in reclaiming power, I think this workshop, it was called Owning Your Power, but I really like reclaiming your power. In reclaiming my power, it took stepping away. It took saying, you know what, I don't mind anymore. I don't care. I'm done trying to put on a face for everyone around me. I'm done trying so hard to fit into a community who only half wants me there. And I really have to live my spiritual existence, my spiritual life. I have to do the things that make me feel whole, that make me feel loved, that make me feel like the divine being that I am, that help me like root myself with something so much bigger than myself and bigger than all of us here in this space. I feel like there's so much more that could be said. And I would love to talk more, especially about embodied spirituality and how we actually all have this gift of our bodies, of our sexualities, something that's very scary for lots of us in these spaces to talk about. That these are all gifts, and these are entrance ways into recognizing our pain and embodying something different, embodying what gives us power and what gives us truth. I think I'll end it there, but I would one, love just to put it out there that the work I'm now doing with my master's thesis is about uncovering shame. And I believe that we've all been traumatized, and it doesn't matter if you've actually experienced like physical sexual assault. I believe the way that women are talked about in the church, and the way that we understand our sexualities, and the way that we understand our sexual selves, the way we understand how we're supposed to relate, man, woman, trans person, regardless of who that is on the other end, the way we're supposed to relate to that person has really been distorted. And we don't even know. I see so many women who are carrying this trauma around and they don't even know. Women who've never had sex before, never been abused, nothing, and get married and say, I don't even want to have sex with my husband. It feels dirty, it feels gross, it doesn't feel right. Like that is trauma. Like that's not supposed to be how we are. And in order to leave that trauma, we must embody ourselves. We actually have to physically, like through physiology, we actually have to shift something. And so I'm studying this through a neuroscience perspective, through theological lens, through trauma recovery lens, through so many different things. And I would absolutely love to talk about it more. So if people are interested in that topic, I welcome more discussions. I would love to talk to you here, but also you can just find me and I'll give you a card. And I would love to get that conversation going in the Mennonite church. I understand it's scary. I understand there's not usually people up here talking about, you know, our sexualities and saying like, hey, we need to embrace this. We really need to like feel this within ourselves. But I definitely want to offer that kind of healing space. And finally, I kind of would just like to wrap this up in a prayer. Divine force, primal force, goddess of all creation, Father of earth, air, fire and wind, the Spirit all around us, ancestors and descendants before us. All that is in this space, please help us know created in a womb, that we are held in that space, and that we are created in the womb of this creation, of this earth. We are created in this space to be born with a birthright to take up space, to proclaim our power, to recognize that inside we are good, to recognize that everything that we are is who we are, and that is okay. That is all right. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And may we recognize that the divine spark lives as much within our hearts as it does outside. I would love if you'd all just repeat with me. I am who I am.
I am who I am.
And that is okay.
That is